Before we go, we'll leave you with some beautiful sceneries from around China. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for more news on Cgtn.
Hello and welcome to The World Today, everyone. I'm Richard Ntai in Nairobi. Let's begin with our top story. Chinese President Xi Jinping has met with Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney in Beijing. President Xi recalled last year's meeting between the two leaders in Gyeongju in the Republic of Korea, saying it ushered in a turnaround for a positive new phase of bilateral relations. He called on China and Canada to advance the building of a new strategic partnership with a sense of responsibility towards history, their people, and the world, and place bilateral relations onto a path of healthy, stable, and sustainable development to better benefit both sides.
Good morning.
Chinese President Xi noted that the sound and steady development of China-Canada relations serves the common interests of both nations. It also contributes to global peace and prosperity. Xi called on the two sides to advance the building of a new China-Canada strategic partnership and deliver greater benefits to the peoples of both countries. Xi put forward 4 proposals on how the two sides could be partners and advance China-Canada relations. First, he said the two countries should respect each other. Xi noted that over the 55 years since the establishment of diplomatic ties, bilateral relations have experienced twists and turns, accumulating valuable experience and practical insights. Despite their differences, Xi said the two sides must respect each other's sovereignty and territorial integrity, as well as the political systems and their respective development path. Secondly, he said the two countries should aim for common development. Mutual benefits and win-win cooperation lie at the core of bilateral economic and trade relations, with both sides gaining substantial benefits from collaboration. China's high-quality development and high-level opening up will continue to create new opportunities and expand the space for bilateral cooperation. He also said the two parties should step up cooperative efforts, streamline negative lists, and further strengthen the bonds of their shared interests through deeper cooperation. Third, he said, the two nations should build mutual trust. She noted that people-to-people exchange serves as the most fundamental interconnection between countries. He called on both sides to encourage cooperation in education, culture, tourism, sports, and local government sectors, facilitate personnel mobility, and foster strong public support for bilateral relations. Lastly, President Xi said the two sides should collaborate with each other. She noted that a divided world cannot address the common challenges facing humanity. He said that the path forward lies in true multilateralism and the building of a community with a shared future for humanity. She pledged that China stands ready to strengthen coordination with Canada under international frameworks such as UN, G20 and APEC to address global challenges together. Prime Minister Carney said that Canada and China share a long history of friendly exchanges with highly complementary economies, extensive common interests, and abundant cooperation opportunities. He noted that Canada is committed to working with China to build a robust, sustainable, and new type of strategic partnership that will bring greater well-being to both peoples. Carney reaffirmed Canada's adherence to One China policy and its dedication to working with China on the basis of mutual respect and collaboration. He called on the two sides to expand energy, agriculture, finance, education, and climate change. He said that multilateralism constitutes the cornerstone of global security and stability, and the global governance initiative proposed by President Xi carries significant importance. Following the meeting, the two sides released a joint statement.
The former president of the Republic of Korea, Yoon Suk-yeol, has been found guilty in the first of several trials linked to his failed martial law attempt in 2024. Yoon has been sentenced to 5 years in prison. Our reporter Shane Hom has more from Seoul.
The court here handing down a sentence of 5 years against the former Republic of Korea President Yoon Suk-yeol here. The prosecutors had initially requested a 10-year sentence. Now, this specific trial, which began back in August, it took nearly 5 minutes to go through the evidence. The main justice an investigation, specifically with the special prosecution team that was trying to initiate an arrest warrant against the former President Yoon back in January of last year after he had been impeached. If you remember, the former president had barricaded himself inside the official residence, but what the court here violated the investigation's attempt into serving that arrest warrant. Also, as far as charges against violating the rights of other cabinet members, which he also faced during these trials, the court found that the cabinet members that were not present at that meeting when this martial law decree was being devised based on law, that violated the rights of those cabinet members. So other minor charges that he was facing against, the court had decided that he's not guilty on those charges. But again, a final verdict sentencing of 5 years being handed down to the former ROK president here. President Yoon has during the entire trial has remained that he is innocent. This martial law decree was under the boundary of the presidential's orders, but based on what the court found is that his abuse of power did cross a line, and it did being arrested, the first sitting one, in fact, here in South Korea. But again, prosecutors had sought 10 years, but this trial, which began in August, is not the end of his legal proceedings. The so-called big one, the insurrection mastermind trial, is set to begin, or the verdict of that is expected to come the middle of next month.
Iran's deputy UN ambassador has warned that the U.S. that it will respond to any act of aggression during a UN Security Council meeting on Thursday. The ambassador to the UN said all options are still on the table. China's deputy ambassador to the UN said China opposes the use or threat of force in international relations. Kate Fisher reports from Washington.
The protests began in Iran's capital, Tehran, late last month before spreading nationwide. While initially focused on economic issues like soaring inflation and a collapsing currency, they soon became anti-government. On Thursday, at the UN Security Council in New York, Iran's representative at the meeting condemned the US position.
It is shameful that the United States regime transferred this esteemed body to a scene for theater and show, for baseless accusation and statement. This is in line with the United States regime in dismantling and disgracing the United Nations system.
China suggests comments by the US about the situation in Iran were causing clouds of war to gather over the Middle East.
We oppose the use or threat of force in international relations, oppose imposing one's will upon other countries, and oppose any regression of the world to the law of the jungle.
US Ambassador to the UN, Mike Waltz, told the Security Council that President Trump says all options are on the table. The UN Secretary-General has expressed deep concern over the reported excessive use of force in Iran and stressed the urgent need to prevent further casualties. But he warned against any possible military strikes on Iran, calling for all issues to be addressed through diplomacy and dialogue. Kate Fisher, Cgtn, Washington.
Several European countries are sending troops and ships to Greenland in a show of support for the semi-autonomous Danish territory. Concerns are growing over the Arctic's island security following talks in Washington about U.S. ambitions to take over Greenland. Jen Copestake reports from the capital, Nuuk.
Well, we were at the airport here in Nuuk this morning and we saw the Danish Hercules transport plane that brought those troops in late last evening from Denmark. So that's a really concrete expression here now of what was seen maybe as something more abstract before, that there are troops here on the ground. As we're traveling through the capital, we do see here and there soldiers that have arrived from different countries. Of course, Denmark has invited forces from countries like Canada, Germany, Norway, Sweden, France, and even the UK we've heard is sending very few soldiers in some of those cases. So the UK, we heard perhaps one soldier is coming to take part in these exercises, to get used to this kind of forward planning for what could be a larger contingent of troops sometime in the future. The Danish foreign minister and the Greenland foreign minister meeting there in Washington yesterday, that we've had so much reaction from people here on the ground. There's actually some disappointment with how that went. People here hoped that what would come out of that meeting was a very clear message that Greenland is not for sale. Instead, what they said, they had heard a reiteration of President Donald Trump's demands to buy Greenland. So that's been very disheartening for a lot of people here. And they said that this has left them with more questions than answers. The sale would fade altogether. One man we spoke to said he was extremely moved to see his foreign minister from Greenland in Washington, how she had been at the press conference, that she seemed to be very emotional. On her part, Vivian Motzfeldt, the foreign minister, said that the last few days have been tough. She was giving a TV interview. Actually, these meetings, they had very well prepared for them, but that she was now feeling overwhelmed. And that's the sense that we're feeling from so many people that we speak to on the streets here in Nuuk. She said there had been so much pressure put on her, and that pressure is being felt with everybody that you speak to. Another man that we spoke to, he said he had dinner with his friend. The schools in Nuuk are terrified that there's going to be an invasion, that some children are not sleeping, they're having nightmares, and that they're not coming to school. We've heard that echoed through adults that we speak to as well. So there's a real sense of tension here, while it's still very calm and peaceful, of course, but people here are quite upset and very worried about what comes next. It seems to be people thinking it's very unpredictable what the White House might do here in Greenland, and that's causing a sense of real concern.
Well, that is it for this edition of The World Today. I'll be back shortly with more news from the continent in Africa Live. Thanks for watching.
Holding guns. Words protesters.
Were you worried about your life at that particular time?
Not at all.
Excellency, thank you very much for your time. What is your assessment of the state of the continent today?
Africa has the potential to power itself.
Excuse me.
Floods kill at least 19 people in South Africa, forcing closure of parts of Kruger National Park. A UN official says the conflict in Sudan has severely undermined basic rights across the country. And in Uganda, preliminary results show President Museveni with a 76% lead. Hello and welcome to Africa Live. As always, great to have you with us. I'm Richard Ntah, live in Nairobi. And for those of you joining us from across the continent and around the globe, we thank you for joining us. Let's take a look at other stories making headlines this hour. Coming up in business, Nigeria's Finance Minister Wale Edun projects a 4.6 economic growth in 2026 as reforms yield positive results. And in sports, CAF bans Cameroonian Football Federation President Eto'o for 4 matches over misconduct. Once again, a very warm welcome to Africa Live. We begin in South Africa, where flooding triggered by torrential rains in the northeast have claimed at least 19 lives overnight. The deaths occurred in a village in Limpopo province near Kruger National Park. Nearly 200 people have been rescued. President Cyril Ramaphosa visited Limpopo on Thursday to assess the extent of the damage and the response of government. Images released by the National Defense Force showed a military helicopter airlifting stranded residents from trees. In neighboring Mpumalanga province, rescuers recovered the body of a woman who drowned while trying to cross a river. The South African was for more rain in parts of the country, while neighboring Mozambique is also on alert after flooding inundated roads and homes. Well, the rains have also led to the closure of parts of South Africa's iconic Kruger National Park. Authorities say they have closed some of the reserve situated in vulnerable areas. Limpopo and Mpumalanga, which park spans, have been the most affected provinces. Cgtn's Wanja Mugai with more.
Kruger National Park, South Africa's largest and most famous reserve, is surrounded by 6 rivers. 3 weeks of intense rainfall in the country have seen them bursting their banks. Authorities say the closure is a precautionary measure until conditions improve, adding that the decision to temporarily close areas like the Palabora Gate in the north was necessary.
We close what is happening in that particular site. The Letaba River has lost its wall. The Oliphant is becoming full. That's why we closed those parts of the park.
The South African Water Service has warned of increased flooding in parts of the northern region, with 100 to 200 millimeters of rainfall expected over the next 2 days. The situation has left authorities concerned over some facilities within the reserve which have been destroyed.
Some of the roads infrastructure has been affected, they've been washed away, and we've lost about 2 bridges, and some of the bridges are covered in the water, as you see behind us here. That this is the road that leads you to the north of the park. What is interesting about the animals is they're quite adaptive to this particular environment. So intuition works with animals. They often move to higher ground, so we're not really worried about. It's moving so fast. Some of the animals will move with the water, particularly crocodiles. So we are saying to people that are living in areas that are adjacent to the park, they must be careful.
Park staff and tourists lodging in areas where campsites have been flooded have been evacuated. In the park, where there is no threat of major flooding, tourists continue to indulge in the wild.
This is why we come to the bush, and we can't help for nature. It's God's way of putting water back into the earth again, and hopefully a bit more animals that's on the breeding and everything, so we're enjoying it.
According to scientists, these floods are among the natural disasters brought about by climate change. On Thursday, the South African Weather Service issued a red level 10 warning for disruptive rainfall for parts of Limpopo and Mpumalanga. Wanja Mugai, Cgtn.
In South Sudan, the UN is working to mitigate the impact of recurrent flooding in Unity State. Flooding in recent years has displaced hundreds of thousands of people. It has also affected vital infrastructure, including roads and schools. To address this challenge, Pakistani engineers serving with the country's UN mission have been working to reinforce the existing dike system, raising it to over 4 meters. A second line of defense is also currently under construction.
We have faced serious problems with flooding because of excessive rainfall. The people assisting us have been a great help and kept this area dry. This area remains dry thanks to the UN. Without this support, we would have been in great trouble as we have nowhere else to go.
If the dikes had not been reinforced and maintained, we would not have been here today, and our children would not have been safe.
Pentio IDP camp, it currently have 0.3 million flood effectees, and they survive on aid. So for them, this air facility is not just an infrastructure, it's their lifeline.
A key or a significant rise in the water level is being observed. Just to put into perspective, 60 centimeters water level rise has been observed in past 2 months only. Now this significant increase is resulting in a lot of pressure on existing dike system. And because of these pressure, these dikes, the episodes of seepage and bulging, they are being observed.
Let's turn to Libya. As it has uncovered mass graves containing the remains of 21 migrants. The graves were discovered during a security raid on a private farm in the eastern city of Ajdabiya. According to preliminary information, the victims are reportedly migrants of various nationalities. They were allegedly killed by a Libyan suspect with a prior criminal record who has since been arrested. The operation also led to the discovery of several migrants being forcibly held in a makeshift detention facility on the same farm. The detainees were found in poor health with some suffering from gunshot wounds. The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, is currently visiting Sudan to assess conditions on the ground in the nearly 3-year conflict there. The UN Human Rights Office says attacks on civilians, mass displacement, hunger, and the collapse of essential services have severely undermined basic rights across Sudan. Cgtn Joy Karuki Juma with the details.
UN Human Rights Chief Turk began his visit to Sudan on Wednesday, even as fighting between the Sudanese armed forces and the Rapid Support Forces continues across multiple regions. He held talks with authorities in Port Sudan and met with civil society groups, humanitarian agencies and the UN country team working to protect civilians and document abuses. On Friday, he traveled to Dongola, the capital of northern state, a key refuge for people displaced by fighting in Darfur and Kordofan regions.
What they are telling me is about the horrible plight that many people, many survivors of this horrific war are going through every day.
Humanitarian partners told the High Commissioner that families have been displaced multiple times, while support for survivors of sexual violence and people with disabilities remains severely limited. Despite these challenges, Turk said local organizations are attempting to find solutions even as resources remain stretched.
There needs to be an all-out effort, both within Sudan and by the international community, to help them to facilitate their work so that they can provide the much-needed humanitarian assistance that is required under the circumstances.
Turk is expected to visit internally displaced communities at the Al Afad gathering site before returning to Port Sudan on Sunday. He will conclude his mission with press briefings in Port Sudan and Nairobi, where he is expected to renew calls for greater protection of civilians and increased international support for humanitarian efforts in Sudan. Joy Kiruki Juma, Cgtn.
Still in Sudan, the army-aligned government has returned to the country's capital, Khartoum, after nearly 3 years of operating from its wartime base in the eastern city of Port Sudan. The military was forced out by the Rapid Support Forces when civil war erupted between the two sides in April 2023. It recaptured the capital early last year and launched a daunting process of rebuilding the country's seat of power. Cgtn's David Mbithi reports.
Sudan's war-torn capital has been recovering from years of fighting. Roughly 5 million people fled the city at the height of the conflict, according to UN estimates. But since the army's recapture of Khartoum last March, the UN says an estimated 1.2 million people have returned. Many, however, found the city on its knees, with barely functioning services and their homes in ruins and rubble. Still, the government's message to Khartoum's beleaguered residents is one of hope and resilience.
We will focus on the livelihood and security of the citizens. Our top priority after the government's return to Khartoum is the livelihood and security of the citizens.
On Monday, authorities held a meeting to review ongoing plans to rebuild the capital after shifting operations back to the city. It followed months of tireless work to reopen federal institutions, and according to residents, many of them are now up and running.
I arrived in Omdurman 5 days ago. I passed through Omdurman, specifically El Wadi Street and El Noor Street, and then went to Khartoum, where activity and work have resumed in the ministries. The Ministry of Communications, the Digital Ministries, the Federal Ministry of Health, the Federal Governance Bureau, the Ministry of Interior, and the Central Bank of Sudan. All these institutions are now operational.
Amid signs of progress, however, is the harsh reality of what it will take to achieve these goals. Before the war, most of the nation's industries were concentrated in the capital, Khartoum, and according to officials, it accounted for a staggering 80% of the country's revenue. Many here say it's more than clear that a lot of work still lies ahead.
People are currently experiencing extremely difficult living conditions. Most sectors are suffering from a lack of production. There are no operating companies or institutions here, and consequently, workers are unemployed.
Meanwhile, the battle for territories continues in the west, where the RSF is consolidating control over Darfur and the Kordofan regions. The fighting has killed tens of thousands and displaced an estimated 12 million, according to UN figures. External efforts to mediate the conflict continue to face setbacks after more than 1,000 days of fighting. David Mbidi, Cgtn.
And in other significant news, Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni has taken an early lead of 76% according to preliminary results released Friday by the Electoral Commission. His main challenger, Bobi Wine, has nearly 20% of the votes counted so far. Earlier, election officials said final results will be announced in several days as political tension remains high. As they monitored the elections, there was heavy security deployment all over the country. Thursday's voting was marred by delays due to technical problems that left many voters stranded at polling stations. And as the day progressed, long queues were seen across the country. Apart from Museveni, who has been in power for nearly 4 decades, 7 other presidential candidates were on the ballot. Well, away from politics, the Nigerian and Moroccan government signed an MOU in September 2022 for a gas pipeline linking the two nations. The Nigeria-Morocco pipeline will cover 5,660 kilometers and pass through 13 African nations. Having completed the feasibility study in 2019, the project is expected to be complete by 2046 at a cost of $25 billion. It will be implemented by the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation and the Moroccan National Office of Hydrocarbons and Mines. According to the MOU, it will produce 30 billion cubic meters per year. Landlocked countries such as Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali are also expected to benefit from the gas pipeline. The proposed Nigeria-Morocco gas pipeline promises to reshape energy flows across West Africa into Europe. But behind the ambition lies a complex web of financing, security, and political risk. Cgtn's Deji Badamosi has more on the story.
With an estimated cost of $25 billion and a capacity of pumping 30 billion cubic meters of liquefied natural gas annually, the ambition is positioned as an alternative gas route to Europe from the heart of Africa at a time of heightened global energy uncertainty. While a final investment decision on the project is still in the works, some investors like the United Arab Emirates, the OPEC Fund, the European Investment Bank and others have pledged financial commitments.
This initiative is great. Sending it to Morocco, Morocco now understands how to use its affinity and closeness to Europe. From Morocco to Europe, probably 20 minutes. So Morocco is now becoming a very big attraction, big commercial attraction for Europe and MENA.
And because it is also a project that cuts across 13 African countries, it is expected that African funding will also be put on the table. So the Afrexim of this world, the AFC of this world, the ADB of this world, those are all African financing, development financing institutions who will be required to pitch in into a financing like this.
But financing alone may not be enough. At the heart of the project is a question of gas supply and whether Nigeria can consistently deliver volumes at scale.
We don't have sufficient infrastructure to deliver gas to our own domestic economy. So it's frankly, even though it's a good idea, none of this really makes any sense until we get serious about making the necessary investments in infrastructure, making the necessary upstream investments in development of non-associated and associated gas to be able to fulfill our domestic obligations as well as our export aspirations.
As part of its decade of gas in cubic feet of proven natural gas reserves, Nigeria is ramping up investments in the country's gas sector. The government says it aims to unlock as much as $20 billion in new investments from 70 priority gas projects over the next few years.
Our gas production has also increased from about 6.5 million standard cubic feet to about over 7 billion standard cubic feet per day. So I think some of those are underpinned by very structural changes. We're also expecting to pull in additional investment, significant investment. We're expecting more investment decisions to come through.
Security is also a major challenge for the project. Large sections of the pipeline will run across regions affected by political instability and insurgency. But partners are undeterred by the challenge.
Even in countries where there are insecurity-related issues, these kind of discussions could still hold, in which the parties will deal with, even if it is warlords that are in those countries, will deal with those warlords to let them realize that, look, even you, as a warlord, your country needs this gas. Apart from that, this gas is a stabilizing factor across several countries, all the way into Europe, where it is leading into.
Construction of the pipeline is expected to begin after the final investment decision, with a completion date of 2046. Nigeria is counting on the project to help it monetize its huge gas reserves and reduce current massive flaring. Should the project come to fruition, the country would effectively be on the path to energy security. DG Badimasi, Cgtn, Lagos, Nigeria.
In Tanzania, President Samia Suluhu Hassan says the country's stalled liquefied natural gas project has now reached a good stage and could soon move forward. The project, potentially the country's largest foreign investment ever, has faced years of delays over disagreements of fiscal terms. Cgtn's Isaac Lukanda reports.
The Tanzanian government says it is eager to see its long-awaited $42 billion liquefied natural gas project move forward this year. After years of delays, a key framework agreement was signed with energy companies Shell and Equinor in 2022, laying the groundwork for construction, with a final investment decision that was expected by the end of 2025.
The discussions have taken some time because we want to make sure that our negotiations, we fully consider the broader national interest and ensure that this project will directly benefit Tanzanians.
Experts say exploiting Tanzania's substantial untapped natural gas deposits will greatly contribute to boosting national prosperity.
It's a major source of revenue for the country. Not only from the direct sales itself, but I'm sure from the different taxes that will be imposed on the project. At the same time, it will create employment opportunities, in particular LNG is the first of its kind in the region, and therefore will give opportunities for Tanzanians who are in the oil and gas or want to be in the oil and gas business to pursue those opportunities, whether it's commercial, engineering, or otherwise.
The government announced last September that the host government agreement and production sharing agreement governing the LNG project were expected to be finalized before the end of 2025. Officials at the Ministry of Energy now say that technical issues and implementation timelines have been agreed upon and that project documents have been submitted to the Attorney General's office for legal review in the first quarter of 2026. Tanzania's proven natural gas deposits amount to approximately 57 trillion cubic feet of gas, placing it fifth among African nations. The government says that getting its liquefied natural gas project off the ground will significantly boost Tanzania's economic prospects by positioning it among key exporters such as Nigeria and Algeria. However, experts caution that the economic benefits of the project will not be immediate, noting that LNG development takes a decade to deliver full returns.
The first 5 years of the schedule will involve technical work, including pre-FEED, which means technical and studies, engineering studies, not only for the subsurface facilities but also for the plant itself, which will be onshore in Lindi, and it will include everything else, including a major port which will allow for vessels to come in and out. Then once you complete those studies and construction starts, construction will probably be about 5 years, 4.5 to 5 years.
President Hassan has directed government agencies to fast-track the final stages before launching the LNG project. Officials say the government hopes that once the project hits its potential capacity of 10 million tons of gas per year, the people in the country will be the ultimate beneficiaries. Isaac Lukando, Cgtn, Dar es Salaam.
In China, an immersive winter cultural experience has opened in suburban Beijing. The 40th Longqingxia Ice Lantern Festival features ice sculptures, festive lantern displays, and a stunning mountain laser show. Nearly 1,000 visitors attended opening night on Thursday. This year's festival consists of significant expansions in scale and visitor experience. It covers a total area of 500,000 square meters. Nearly half of it is dedicated to ice and lantern displays set against a natural ice-covered canyon. Longqingxia hosts the largest and longest running ice lantern exhibition in northern China. The highlight is the journey can view scenes from the classic Chinese tale Monkey King, Havoc in Heaven. The centerpiece is a 13.6 meter high South Heavenly Gate ice structure. In addition, 18 large themed lantern sets and 180 smaller lanterns are arranged throughout the valley, and mythological stories to celebrate the Lunar New Year. The festival first opened in 1987 and will run through early March. Well, time now for our business segment. Let's take a look at those headlines. Coming up in business, Nigeria's Finance Minister Wale Edun projects a 4.6% economic growth in 2026 as reforms yield positive results. And Germany GDP returns to positive territory after 2 years of contraction. Welcome into our business segment. Nigeria has entered a phase of economic consolidation after 2 years of reforms that help steady inflation, stabilize the currency, and lift investor confidence. Speaking at the launch of a New Year National Economic Outlook report, Finance Minister Wale Edun forecasts 4.6% growth in 2026, with inflation averaging 16.5% and the Naira stabilizing at around 1,400 per dollar. He said Nigeria had reached a turning point after a turbulent transition marked by subsidy removal and exchange rate unification. Edun said inflation had eased to around 14% in November from 33% a year earlier, and the Naira firmed below 1,500 per US dollar. He added that growth averaged 3.78% in the first 9 months of 2025, while external reserves rose to $45.5 billion. Since taking office in 2023, President Bola Tinubu has rolled out Nigeria's most ambitious economic overhaul in decades by ending fuel and energy subsidies twice, devaluing the naira currency, and changing the tax system to boost public finances. Egypt has announced a series of multi-billion-dollar investment deals with European and Chinese companies aimed at realizing its ambitious Vision 2030 strategy, which includes increasing the renewable energy mix in its electricity grid. Cgtn's Yasser Hakim has more.
Egypt is stepping up efforts to achieve its goals for renewable energy to account to 42% of total energy production by 2030. $2 billion deals will go a long way in achieving these targets. First is with China's Sungrow for assembling and producing solar panels in Egypt. The second with Norway's Katek for a solar energy plant to generate electricity and energy storage stations.
To achieve our targets, we are forced to import solar panels and all components for clean energy. Today, with these two factories, Egypt enters the age of becoming a solar panel and renewable energy producer, and we will no longer spend hard currency for imports.
The North African country produces over 60,000 megawatts of electricity, while consumption exceeds 41,000.
Over 80% of the country's electricity production is powered by natural gas. The rest is from clean sources, mainly solar, wind, and hydro energy.
The government has been taking huge strides by providing tax breaks, favorable pricing terms, and building the proper infrastructure to attract investments to double renewables output, which is eco-friendly, more sustainable, and less expensive than fossil fuels. However, reducing natural gas consumption will allow Egypt to export its excess gas to increase state revenue.
Egypt is expanding with a dream to be a regional hub for all forms of energy. We import gas, liquefy it, and re-export it. We signed deals to import natural gas from Cyprus, Israel, and others to liquefy it in our facilities. We recently signed agreements to export to Lebanon, Syria, and Jordan, besides Europe. We are on the right track.
And China is a major contributor for Egypt's energy dreams.
China is not just important for Egypt, but for the world. It produces over 80% of solar panels and components globally. China also helps in the transfer of technology. There have been multiple contracts and more in the pipeline with China for technology transfer. Egypt can be a hub for Chinese companies to assemble and produce here and distribute to the region. China is open for this. China is essential for our success.
These plans will also be given a major boost after the opening of the Daba nuclear energy plant in 2029, adding an expected 4,800 megawatts of clean energy to the electricity grid. Yas Hakim for Cgtn, Cairo.
Ghana is preparing sweeping reforms to its mining sector, targeting long-standing investment agreements and proposing higher royalties as global gold prices rise. Authorities say the change are meant to ensure the country captures more value from its mineral resources while still remaining attractive to investors.
Mining has long been central to Ghana's economy, helping the country become Africa's top gold producer. Now the government is moving to overhaul how the sector is regulated as bullion prices surge globally. At the Ghana Minerals Commission in the capital of Accra, officials say long-standing policies have gone too long without review.
Every 5 years, the policy would have to be reviewed. What we have since 2014, this has not been done, and we had to do something to bridge this gap. So that is the basis for the new reforms on the policy.
Ghana's agreements typically lock in royalty and tax terms for between 5 and 15 years. This is in exchange for investments of up to $500 million to build or expand mines. But authorities say some companies fail to meet their obligations.
Some of these companies had stability agreement. Common district assembly levy, they refused to pay. And there were things that, some people When the market is good, you should have done for the people, they didn't. So, I mean, we feel it's been abused, and we don't want to continue in that direction.
Under the proposed reforms, mining royalties would rise from the current 3 to 5% range to between 9 and 12% depending on gold prices.
There is still some discussion, and we are not doing it in isolation because they are our partners. I mean, we've lived with some of these companies over 30 years, and we think we can find a way out to ensure that we are getting our fair share of our mineral resource.
The regulator says development agreements would be scrapped entirely. It adds that the move reflects Ghana's growing experience in managing its mining sector.
I don't think at this stage in our life as a country we will have to give them, because it's been over-exploited. I mean, it's been abused by some of these international companies, because I've seen companies that have development agreement that refuse to develop the mine, and instead we're using the revenue from the country to buy mines elsewhere.
The proposed law, expected to be presented to Parliament by March, would also tighten local content rules aimed at supporting indigenous businesses.
Mining is about numbers. Once you put them together and you can make profit, it doesn't matter what people are doing. They know. I mean, it's their job to fight it.
As African governments seek a bigger share of revenues, Ghana says the challenge will be balancing investor confidence with the need to maximize returns from its mineral wealth. Ian Kenyo, Cgtn.
Germany's GDP grew by 0.2% in 2025, ending 2 consecutive years of economic contraction. Cgtn's Peter Oliver has more on the significance of this return to growth and the factors that continue to hold the economy back.
0.2%, not a huge figure, but symbolically it could be massive for the mentality around Germany, also German industry and German manufacturing in particular. It comes off the back of 2 consecutive years of contraction. 0.2, not a big number as I said, but it's still in the black and not in the red where things have been for a while now. When I talked about it being symbolically a big number, that's because, well, for a lot of the time, perception is reality when it comes to things like the economy. And the perception in Germany is that things are bad. 63% of those polled by the Eurozone Consumer Sentiment Survey said they thought things with the finances in Germany weren't looking so rosy. So modest growth, it's being driven by household spending and by government spending as well. Friedrich Merz is $500 billion, just over $500 billion worth of infrastructure money that he wanted to pump into Germany to sort out the crumbling infrastructure here seems to have had an effect there. Also, in household spend, I have heard it mentioned already. How much of that is down to things being, well, quite expensive these days? What we're looking at is Germany's export-led economy. The whole model of that economy is under fire right now. It's under fire from a number of directions, but really the exports are weak and investment into industry is incredibly weak at the moment. Global trade, also the uncertainty that exists there right now, not great if you're so reliant on exports. They've also fallen foul of Donald Trump's tariffs, as well as increasing competition in certain sectors, particularly the auto sector, where we've seen big names like VW and Audi come in real dire straits, with VW forced to lay off some staff and talking about closing down factories and everything like that as well. Ultimately, high energy costs have come into there as well. Let's look at some of the places where they've done well. If you're in the services sector, particularly if you're in hospitality and tourism, things have gone well. If you're selling those things that households in infrastructure, you've done all right. However, the big things like cars, chemicals, and all those blue chip German companies, they've not done so good. So it's slim growth, but very, very slim.
Oil prices rose slightly early Friday, recovering from sharp losses the previous day. At 6% to about $64 a barrel, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate gained 0.2% to over $59. This modest uptick follows steep declines on Thursday when both benchmarks dropped over 4% and Brent crude recorded its largest single-day fall in 6 months. The earlier sell-off was triggered by fading geopolitical concerns related to Iran. Analysts at Goldman Sachs maintain a bearish outlook for oil this year, forecasting an expanding global surplus and an average Brent price significantly below current levels. And we're not done just yet. We've got your sports segment coming up after the break. Let's take a look at the headlines. Coming up in sports, CAF bans Cameroonian Football Federation President Eto'o for 4 matches over misconduct.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Welcome to Africa Live with me, Richard and Todd. Let's talk a bit of football. The final draw for the CAF Women's Africa Cup of Nations to be held in Morocco later this year took place Thursday. The hosts will be joined in Group A by Algeria, Senegal, and Kenya. Group B will feature South Africa, Cote d'Ivoire, Burkina Faso, and Tanzania. And defending champions Nigeria were drawn in a challenging Group C, along with Zambia, Egypt, and debutantes Malawi. Group D will feature Ghana, Cameroon, Mali, and the other debutante, Cape Verde. The 2 sides in each group will advance to the quarterfinals, and the 4 teams that reach the semifinals 2027 FIFA Women's World Cup in Brazil. However, it will not be the end of the road for the quarterfinal losers, as they will play in a set of matches to determine which 2 African teams will enter the Inter-Confederation playoffs for a place at the World Cup. Elsewhere, Cameroonian Football Federation President Samuel Eto'o has been handed a 4-match ban by CAF for misconduct. The former Cameroonian striker was also fined $20,000 after the Continental Governing Body concluded he had violated its principles of sportsmanship. According to a statement released by CAF, the former Barcelona Inter Milan striker was reportedly seen making an angry gesture over some of the decisions made by the officials as Cameroon lost to Morocco in the 2025 AFCON quarterfinals. Fecafoot expressed support for its president in a statement on Wednesday, while suggesting Eto'o would appeal the sanction. And host Morocco are turning AFCON 2025 into a driver of tourism, investment, and long-term development. The tournament is not just a sporting event, but is also serving as a strategic showcase. The event's success aligns with Morocco's tourism roadmap for 2023 to 2026, which seeks to accelerate infrastructure and service upgrades. Officials say the AFCON is already delivering desired results. Cgtn's Anish Washi brings us the details.
From arrival to kickoff, supporters traveling from across Africa say Morocco's organization of AFCON has exceeded expectations by offering a smooth, safe and enjoyable experience in every host city.
We thank the Kingdom of Morocco for this warm welcome and the organization of AFCON.
The transport, the tourism, and everything is great here. The success of AFCON prepares for hosting the World Cup. The organization is very professional. It's a beautiful AFCON. This is the best AFCON ever.
The tournament has also given a lift to domestic tourism, as supporters from all corners of the kingdom travel between the 6 host cities to watch the matches.
As a Moroccan fan, I'm proud of the achievements of my country. Meeting AFCON-related tourists from all over the continent is an amazing and beautiful experience.
Travel agencies and tourism operators are seeing increased business as AFCON fuels a surge in visitors. From fast food counters, are feeling the impact of the AFCON tourist influx.
There is a huge push for tourism. We work before, during and after the matches. AFCON is a great opportunity for all business activities in Morocco.
Morocco welcomed nearly 19.8 million tourists in 2025, up 14% from the previous year. Officials say AFCON has helped boost visibility and confidence, marking a new chapter for the country's tourism sector. Alben Shawishi, Cgtn.
In the Spanish Copa del Rey, second-tier side Albacete stunned Real Madrid 3-2, knocking them out of the last 16 on Thursday. Javi Villar opened the score in the 42nd minute before Franco Mastantuono pulled one back in added time of the first half for 1-1 at the break. The hosts waited until late to pull ahead once again with Jeff Bentoncourt's 82nd minute goal. Gonzalo Garcia pulled Real level in the first minute of added time, but Bentoncourt's goal 3 minutes later gave the underdogs a famous victory. And the Winter Olympics torch relay made a stop at the Certoso di Pavia Monastery complex as it continues the journey across Italy ahead of the opening ceremony in Milan. The monastery is in Lombardy near the town of Pavia and is among the largest and most impressive in the country. The flame began its journey across Italy from Rome last month and has been to the islands of Sardinia and Sicily, as well as the southern cities of Naples and Bari. This has been part of a 12,000-kilometer journey that will end at Milan's San Siro Stadium on February the 6th. The relay is part of efforts to generate excitement across the country before the games begin at a variety of locations, with the financial capital Milan and the Alpine resort Cortina d'Ampezzo the two main bases. And a bit of news from the world of tennis. Men's tennis may have moved into a new era, and one rivalry is already capturing global attention. Carlos Alcaraz and Jannik Sinner have pushed each other to extraordinary heights, delivering some of the sport's most memorable moments, including an epic French Open final last year. Speaking ahead of the Australian Open, 20-time Grand Slam champion Roger Federer says the growing Sincaras rivalry is exactly what tennis needs, and he hopes it continues to.
The rivalry between Alcaraz and Sinner, I think, is a great one. I mean, they play incredible tennis. I think that French Open final was unreal. I think the game, not that it needed it, but I think it was great that we had it. You know, because I feel like for a moment, the world stood still in the sporting world and watched towards Paris and what was going on, you know, in that epic fifth set, because it could have ended much sooner for Jannik, obviously, and then all of a sudden it just ended up in this most crazy fashion, made it one of the greatest games you know, we've ever had in our sport. So I think it's good we still live off that momentum, and then they backed it up by playing each other in all those other finals.
And at the Australian Open draw ceremony in Melbourne on Thursday, defending champion Sinner was handed a first-round clash against French world number 94 Hugo Gaston. He will begin his quest for a third consecutive title at Melbourne Park. Men's top seed Carlos Alcaraz will open his campaign against world number 79 Adam Walton of Australia. This is as the Spaniard chases a maiden Australian Open crown and a chance to become the youngest man to complete a career Grand Slam. Meanwhile, 10-time champion Novak Djokovic, seeded fourth, was drawn against Spain's world number 71 Pedro Martinez. The tournament gets underway on Sunday. Well, that is it for this edition of Africa Live. Remember, you can send us your feedback to the contacts on the screen and follow us on digital media platforms. For the team, I'm Richard Ntal saying thank you so much for watching, and we'll have more Africa Live coming your way in 6 hours' time. So stay tuned and stay here on CGTN.